I wanted to do a brief segment on some of the decocking features of some of your auto-loading pistols. That is specifically your pistols that go from a double action to a single action mode after they're fired once or after they're cocked. And the purpose of a decocking feature is to put the hammer from the cocked position back into the rest position without having to do, as you see in the movies like in the Wild West, where they squeeze the trigger and they ride the hammer down. I have two pistols in front of me. One is a SIG P228, and this is the one I want to first demonstrate. It's my preferred style of decocking that I've seen out there on the marketplace. You'll notice that with the hammer in the rearward position, what you will typically see in a lot of shows is to put the hammer in the downward position. Somebody will squeeze the trigger and simultaneously ease the hammer forward here in order to, well, my thumb slipped off it in that case, but will allow it to come back down. Well, the trouble with releasing the hammer in that instance is that you can have a likelihood of a discharge if your thumb were to slip off of the hammer. Since your trigger is depressed, the pistol would see that mechanically as a firing cycle perhaps. So instead, what they've offered out there is actually a decocking feature, and actually this lever right here, which you can see coming down a little bit, hopefully with my finger out of the way, is what that's meant to do is when it comes all the way down to its bottom point of its travel, it actually picks up the pressure on the hammer, and then as you let up on it, it actually releases the hammer here. So as I take this lever here and I rotate that down in an arc fashion, I pick up the trigger, I release the pressure from the trigger, and then the hammer, and I put it back. It's very quiet. It's my actually preferred one. It's not going to be quite as choppy as the USP you'll see. It gives the user a lot of control on the right-handed thumb to be able to actuate that very, very easily to put the hammer back in the rest position. So the other one I wanted to show was on the HK USP. Now here, once again, with a slide forward, I can squeeze the trigger and ride the hammer home to take it off into the double action mode again, or since this one has it built into it, there's safety here. As you can see, when it's all the way up, that's when the pistol isn't safe. One notch down is when it's in fire mode, and if you continue to depress this and swing this around, then it actually takes the pressure off of the hammer, and you'll see it once again release here on the trigger. But it's a very loud type of release, and so I don't care for that as much, simply because it sounds less covert typically. And so if you went from a single action mode and you never fired the pistol, whether you drew it back or at some point you had your gun in this instance on safe, for instance, because you thought you were in imminent need of using your pistol and you preferred to use it in the single action mode, you could very quickly go from fire and then back into the double action mode without having to worry about a discharge. It just happens to be a little bit louder. So one more time, I'll just show you that swings down from all the way up as safe in this particular variant. That's fire, and then as it's rotated down, and then it releases it. So those are two of the types of decockers that I have in front of me to show you on auto-loading pistols. There's actually a few other types, like on your Berettas, etc. They typically use the safety both as a decocker feature as well as the safety itself. There's a couple other models that have internal firing mechanisms where the hammer is not exposed, and typically they'll have a button or some type of lever actually on the top of the pistol itself that once you depress it actually releases the pressure off of the firing pin, making it a longer trigger pull and less susceptible to discharge on that first shot. So your P99 and those types of pistols will have that type of decocker available. So just to break it down real quick, I know that there's not a lot of videos out there on decockers, so that's kind of my spin real quick on for those of you who don't or hadn't seen them clearly demonstrated online to this point. So hopefully you pick something up.